I'm not in favor of this at all because I do think that we've seen evidence of tyrannical governments and also just anything can happen, natural disasters and all the power is out and you've got people looting and I mean you just need to be able to
Right.
protect yourself. So I'm not at all a fan of banning guns, but what about the areas that have just disarmed populations? They just do not have guns circulating in there, like China, for example. What do we see? Do we see less, fewer mass shootings, fewer gun deaths in populations that are disarmed?
Right. So, look, there are lots of reasons why crime rates vary across countries. I'll just make a comment. China, I don't believe a lot of their crime data that comes out. There's they control a lot of it. But here's the deal: any place in the world that's banned either all guns or all handguns, that we have crime data both before and after the ban, every single time murder rates and homicide rates have gone up. You'd think out of randomness, once or twice, they would go down. You'd think that if guns and net are bad, surely you would see it go down sometimes, most of the time. And yet, every single time it goes up. Now, in Washington, D.C., and Chicago, the argument is, well, those weren't fair tests because unless you ban guns every place in the country, criminals could still go and get guns from Maryland and Virginia or from the rest of Illinois or from Indiana or Wisconsin or something. But, there are a few points to make there. One is it would have been nice if they had kind of told people before those laws got passed that they didn't think that they were going to work, But secondly, the other thing is that doesn't explain why they went up. It may explain why the murder rates didn't go down as much as they were predicting beforehand. And third, we can look around the world where whole countries have banned guns, or even island nations have banned guns. Even island nations that have banned guns, whether it be Jamaica or the Republic of Ireland or the UK, have seen large increases in murder and homicide rates after they banned guns. And here's the problem. When you see this happen every single time, okay, you want to look for what's going on. And basically what happens is that when you ban guns, and this applies to gun control laws generally, not just bans, is who's most likely to obey the law. And what you find is it's most likely the most law-abiding good citizens who obey the law and not the criminals. And to the extent that you may take a few guns away from the criminals, but if you're primarily disarming the law-abiding citizens, you're actually making it easier for criminals to go and commit crimes. So take a country that's right next to California, take Mexico. Since 1972, Mexico's had one gun store in the country. So you've had 50 years where you've had this. It's run by the military. Even to just apply for a license, it costs over $2,000 just to apply for a license to own a gun in Mexico. You have less than 0.1% of the adult population in Mexico is legally licensed to own a gun. I've testified before the Mexican Federal Senate and House Constitution Committees, and I've had federal senators in Mexico come up to me and say they've applied to go and get a gun for protection because of all the death threats that they've had, and they can't even get a license from the government to be able to go and own a gun down there. And these are federal senators that have been unable to do that. The murder rate in Mexico, since they passed that very draconian law, has more than doubled. The most powerful gun that you've been able to legally buy in Mexico since 1972 is a 22 caliber short round bolt action rifle. That's not the type of gun that the drug gangs are using.
Right.
And yet in many recent years, the murder rate in Mexico has been as high as 6 times higher than the murder rate that we've had in the United States. There are all these false claims about the United States being the source of guns for Mexico. They'll say 90% of the crime guns. The numbers are completely bonkers. What they do is, what they're saying is really 90% of the guns that they asked to be traced to the United States were from the United States. But the thing is, the United States is unique in terms of having things like serial numbers on guns. So it's pretty easy. You go and you look at a gun, and all it's saying is that So they ask like 17% of the guns that they've confiscated to be traced. And maybe 15% of the 17% actually were from the United States. So it's just a small percentage. They bring in
Right.
guns from around the world.
So it's like
Just as
90%
if,
of traceable guns are from the United
right,
States, but what percentage are not traceable? Most of them.
right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah. Interesting. And yeah, I'm surprised to find, I mean, I didn't know this about Mexico or their gun control laws. That would be one place, if I lived in Mexico, I would absolutely want a gun. I'd want a gun to
Right.
protect
Well, I
myself
mean,
from anything.
when I testified before the federal Senate and House there, it was they come and they pick me up in an armored limousine. It had like 3/4 inch thick windows on it. Uh, they wouldn't even let me out of my hotel room without having two huge 7 foot tall bodyguards that were there. I said, I'm just going to go down. This is a 5-star hotel, in one of the safest parts of Mexico City. I just want to go down and have breakfast. They said, no, you have to call in. The two guys will come to your door at your hotel room and they'll walk you down to the breakfast area. It was just, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they thought I was saying something that was too controversial or something. Who knows? But it just
Maybe, I mean, if certain groups just want to be the ones with the guns because they have the power. I mean, if you're the one with the
right,
gun, you've got more power. And if there are definitely players out there who want the power, and so they don't want others to have the weapons. You could control a
right,
population. Maybe they would be
right.
definitely thinking you're threatening. Very interesting. I'm glad we had this conversation. I know you could go on forever. There's a lot of data there. I'm just going to direct people to the resources. I've got the links down below to where they can read more from you and the research that you've done. Very fascinating. I mean, it sounds to me like there's a couple of things. First of all, concealed carry for law-abiding citizens so that they can protect themselves. Also, probably concealed carry in areas where there are vulnerable populations who would not be carrying, like children or hospitals or elderly places where people are more vulnerable, perhaps. And it sounds to me like the media needs to change the way the media reports on mass shooters. Like, stop saying their names. Maybe have like a kind of a code of ethics amongst the journalists that we do not talk about the person. That's what happens in all of these mass shootings is we start talking about the person. We want to know, who was this person? How old are they? What was their
Right,
ideology? Who did they vote for? Right? We want to know everything
right.
about them. And then and you're saying that with these guys, when you read their manifestos, this is what they're wanting. They're wanting that glory. They're wanting that
Oh, yeah.
infamous. Yeah. So stop doing that. And maybe
And you're
that would
not going to
help
get the
also
media to
lower.
stop. You're not going to get the media to stop. I mean, there's been moves in the past. I think many people in the media realize this. But what I would say is, look, we don't need to get rid of the First Amendment. What we need to do is read their diaries and manifestos to know what they want to get out of this. Because if you can make it so that somebody's there quickly with the gun, and they know somebody's going to be there quickly with the gun, so they're not going to believe that they're going to be able to go and kill many people. I'd rather have a sign in front of a school that says, teachers and staff here are armed, even if they're not armed, to make the killers believe that there is somebody there that's going to
Yeah.
be able to go and stop them.